end up getting off those moves. And one of the reasons why Durant is particularly a difficult Pokemon to play against is because it's so hard, especially when you have a Togekiss right next to it, to actually avoid the massive amounts of damage that it's able to do with its hustle ability.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very interesting. I'm going to be surprised to watch how these two teams match up. Oliver's team definitely seems, and the team that we saw Alfredo piloting earlier, that used many of the same Pokemon, seemed way more offensive, like just sort of go, go, go. Eduardo has chosen to slow things down with his team, and you can see that from the very lead choices here. Eduardo going with the Arcanine and Tyranitar up against that Inteleon Grimmsnarl that Oliver's decided to lead with.
This is a difficult spot for Eduardo to be in right at this very moment, just because both of these Pokemon are a little bit weak to Inteleon. So I think that this lead ends up working out a little bit better for Oliver, but I would expect to see maybe a bit of a reposition coming out from Eduardo just in order to preserve some of this damage. But Arcanine can be teched in a couple of different ways, particularly with that move Snarl. So
Yeah.
Eduardo might opt to keep the Arcanine in just so that they can get off some Snarls and make sure that they can't do too much special attack.
Yeah, again, the good thing is that especially this Dynamaxed Inteleon can deal a lot of damage, but usually only at one Pokemon at a time. So either this Arcanine or the Tyranitar may have the ability to stall out some of these Dynamax max moves from Inteleon and fire back. But it looks like the best way of doing that, if your Pokemon's going to get big, I can make my Pokemon big too, and that's a Dynamax Tyranitar just towering over the field.
I really like this play from both of these players because when you talk about Dynamaxing, you want to make sure that you are using as much of the Dynamax as possible, that you're getting maximum value. Oh, but the fake tears here coming off of the Grimmsnarl into the protected Arcanine, but Max Airstream.
That's one of the interesting things about Inteleon is it does get access to Max Airstream when it Dynamaxes. So we'll be able to boost the speed of itself and the Grimmsnarl through the protect of the Arcanine, but because it was able to avoid the fake tears and still had the protect up, not a lot of damage. Max Knuckle, though, from Tyranitar, going to fire back, boost its own attack, and deal a little bit back to that big Inteleon.
This is a turn where I feel as though the secondary effects of those max moves end up being so important because we saw the max airstream coming out from Inteleon. It's going to boost the speed of both that Inteleon as well as the Grimmsnarl, but on Eduardo's side, you see a really nice setup to get off big damage with the Tyranitar, going for that max knuckle and increasing the attack stat of both the Arcanine as well as that Tyranitar. More importantly for the Tyranitar than anything else.
Yeah, really interesting. I think Eduardo is getting a lot more out of that max knuckle than Oliver is getting out of the airstream right now. Inteleon already the fastest Pokemon on the field here, and Grimmsnarl probably just going to keep using the Prankster, so really just getting the damage onto Arcanine with the airstream, while Tyranitar with that max knuckle, Tyranitar with boosts is scary. Even just a single attack boost on Tyranitar, and it can start running over teams.
Yeah, and a lot of times when we see a Tyranitar, we often see that it might be carrying that weakness policy, which we're about to find out here as that Max Geyser does hit.
Big Max Geyser, half damage on the Dynamax Tyranitar, will get rid of the sand and set the rain, but as you mentioned, going to activate the weakness policy. That Tyranitar is so scary right now.
It's very scary. Arcanine, though, going for a flamethrower into the Grimmsnarl, just getting a bit of chip damage there.
Yeah, just a little bit of damage. The foul play, though, because of the big boost to Tyranitar, even though it's not very effective, still dealing quite a bit of damage back. The airstream there actually coming up big for Oliver, being able to let that Grimmsnarl, make sure that Grimmsnarl was able to get off the foul play. But the Rockfall with the Sandstorm, you see exactly why this Tyranitar with boost is a terrifying sight. Immediately knocks out that Inteleon.
This is really going to give Eduardo a bit of an advantage moving into the next couple of turns because that Tyranitar is still Dynamaxed and it still has access to its max moves, as well as the weakness policy boost that it just got from the Max Geyser. It's really unfortunate that Oliver's Max Geyser wasn't enough to knock out the Tyranitar or even put it kind of within striking distance of that foul play that was coming out from the Grimmsnarl, because even a second foul play isn't going to be enough to knock out this Tyranitar yet.
Here's the counter, though. Conkeldurr loves to see Tyranitar on the other side of the field, especially if it has the Mach Punch move, which will give it priority fighting damage against Tyranitar, which is 4 times weak to it. That being said, Tyranitar is still scary. Have to focus down that Tyranitar, which can open up opportunities for Arcanine to be a little bit obnoxious on this team, or for Eduardo to reposition.
Well, looks like Eduardo's going to go for the reposition that you mentioned before, so Arcanine is going to switch out for Togekiss.
Great switch.
Togekiss is going to be an excellent switch here as the Mach Punch goes into the Tyranitar, and that's going to be the last legs that this Tyranitar gets to stand on.
Yeah, Tyranitar goes down to the Mach Punch. Always sad to see Dynamax Pokemon go down before they finish their Dynamax, but that foul play is going to deal no damage to the Togekiss, and we're going to see now our first Togekiss of the tournament. I'm actually kind of surprised it took us until the second game to see our first Togekiss.
A little bit too for me too.
It's here now, and we'll have to see why all of these players are terrified of Togekiss, ranking it as maybe the most threatening Pokemon in the format right now.
One of the reasons why Togekiss ends up being such a difficult Pokemon to play against, because it has 2 very powerful abilities, Super Luck or Serene Grace, and it's only a matter of time before we figure out which ability this particular Togekiss that Eduardo has is running.
All right, well, Arcanine switches back in, gets the Intimidate off onto the Conkeldurr. We'll show off this Snarl, which is just going to deal a little bit of damage, maybe hoping to cover a switch in there. Because neither that Conkeldurr nor the Grimmsnarl care about getting their special attack dropped. Foul Play does a little bit of damage to the Arcanine, but it's just going to heal that up with the Citrus Berry.
Citrus Berry, an important item to be revealed here, but Dazzling Gleam now going to connect with both Pokemon, and we're also seeing a tech onto the Grimmsnarl there.
The Roselli Berry?
Yes,
okay.
It looks like a Roselli Berry, but a critical hit onto at least one of the Pokemon there. It's going to be that Conkeldurr that ended up getting that critical hit, but the Drain Punch is going to be able to get a lot of that damage right back to its health pool.
All right, so we saw 1 crit from that Togekiss. One out of 2 crits typically indicates that it might be the Super Luck ability. If we see a few more, that'll probably confirm it for the players. Or Eduardo could have just gotten incredibly lucky.
Could have been incredibly lucky. Who knows?
Drain Punch gives that Conkeldurr a little bit more health to play with, but still going to be in a risky position if Togekiss is able to get more crits. So Oliver making the smart choice to retreat that Pokemon in favor of the Rotom.
Rotom, a Pokemon that we did get a chance to see as a part of the team preview from our match earlier with Alfredo, but didn't get a chance to see too much of what that's capable of doing here. But the Fake Tears now going into the Togekiss special defense going to fall here, but another Dazzling Gleam. This is where we potentially find out.
Ooh, more big damage on Grimmsnarl and the Rotom. That's another critical hit onto the Grimmsnarl, going to faint. So looking likely that you're looking at the Super Luck variant of the Togekiss. One of the things that makes it so scary is that Super Luck ability combined even potentially with items that might even further increase the critical hit rate. Like Scope Lens, yeah.
Yeah, that's a very, very scary combo. One of the reasons why Togekiss ends up being one of those Pokemon that you're not super sure you want to see on the other side of the board there. Super Luck and Scope Lens ends up increasing the critical hit chance by so much. It ends up almost being like a constant critical hit fiesta on the board, which is definitely something that Oliver is going to want to pay attention to and take into consideration moving forward in this game.
Okay, well, Eduardo's just going to go ahead and use Follow Me on Togekiss this time around. Is finished with the Dazzling Gleam. He's just going to protect the Arcanine instead, which will fire off the Flamethrower onto the Rotom. Not quite enough to pick up the KO. Especially not going to be able to pick up the KO with the Sand after eating the Citrus Berry to heal back up. And the big Rotom Thunderbolt. We did see the Fake Tears onto Togekiss the last turn, so that is going to pick up the KO.
That was really smart play. 2 turns in a row there from Oliver, just setting up to be able to knock out this Togekiss. Now we have the same number of Pokemon for both sides of the field. It's going to be the Conkeldurr and the Rotom left for Oliver, and the last and final Pokemon for Eduardo is going to be that Gourgeist, which has that Frisk ability, so we'll be able to reveal a bit more information about those items to Eduardo moving forward in this game, especially looking at the Assault Vest.
Yeah, revealing the Assault Vest, Eduardo's probably shaking his head, understandably, like, okay, that's why I haven't already picked up the KO on that Conkeldurr, even though I got the crits from my Togekiss. So good information to know here. And very important, just having the full health of the Gourgeist. Arcanine, Gourgeist is going to have to do some work here. Arcanine is in Mach Punch range, and there's no Togekiss left to protect it, so it has to protect itself.
Is going to protect itself, and lo and behold, it is going to be the Mach Punch going into the Protect. Rotom using the Will-O-Wisp, though, into the Gourgeist slot, is going to be able to get the burn.
Interesting, just going to go for the burn onto Gourgeist, try to get some damage off. Ooh, and Rotom avoids the Will-O-Wisp from Eduardo's side. So Oliver hitting his Will-O-Wisp, Eduardo missing his. That's sort of just how Will-O-Wisp goes sometimes.
Sometimes. When I'm looking at the Gourgeist, I often see this Pokemon running something like a Trick Room set, so I'm really interested in this decision from Eduardo to bring the Gourgeist in the back instead of actually bringing it forward as a potential there, but that's going to be it for Arcanine.
Yeah, fails the double protect, so has to take the Mach Punch. A Thunderbolt coming out from Rotom is going to deal just a little bit of damage back to the Gourgeist. The Will-O-Wisp burn is going to be dealing the most damage for Oliver against that Pokemon, at least from the Mo Rotom.
Well, we'll have to keep in mind that Gourgeist is also going to be burned here. I don't know the rest of the moveset that this particular Gourgeist is running, but usually ends up being more of a physical attacker, so that is going to be very important to know.
Yeah, the Thunderbolt just a little bit more chip damage here, opening it up for the Conkeldurr potentially. Yep, does show the Ice Punch. Conkeldurr does have some good options against Pokemon like the Gourgeist. Barely hangs on, but that Seed Bomb after the burn, not dealing enough damage. Oliver is going to take this win. A really strong play, a really strong showing from Oliver, able to instantly take control of that game about halfway through.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it looked like Eduardo was a bit in the driver's seat for the beginning of the game, but it was a couple of turns there where Oliver was able to set up in order to knock out the Togekiss that I really feel like was where that game swung in Oliver's favor.
Yeah, that fake tears, the sort of desynced fake tears Thunderbolt combo there. Very cool to see a player thinking, you know, not just about the turn that's happening, but the next turn.
Yeah, absolutely. You kind of have to have that mentality when you are playing these games where what is my opponent thinking? We talked about the empathy. We talked about thinking about what the opponent is thinking of in their head. And you definitely need to be thinking ahead of, okay, what do you think their win condition is? How do I beat that win condition? Yeah,
and by getting that Togekiss off the field, Oliver had correctly identified how Eduardo would have been able to take that win from him. And Oliver took it for themselves. And very well played. I have to see what's going to happen here in Game 2. You know, Eduardo is a player who has plenty of experience in best-of-3 sets at very high levels, so has a lot of information now to go into this Game 2 to see if Eduardo is going to be able to come back or if Oliver is going to make a very strong showing here at the tournament and go 2-0.
That would be a great way to start, but we're getting into team preview for this Game 2, and I really feel as though Oliver played that just pretty expertly, especially with those middle couple of turns in the mid-game. But I have a feeling that Eduardo, being one of those players that is just so seasoned, is going to be able to find a way to come back from this.
Yeah, it was such an interesting start to the game. Eduardo got a whole bunch of boosts on Tyranitar, but Tyranitar was only able to take out the opposing Inteleon. And Inteleon wasn't the big threat on this team for Eduardo. You look at Eduardo's team, and Inteleon's not that big of a deal for these Pokemon, except for the Tyranitar and the Arcanine. So, that trade probably not worth it to trade the Dynamax Tyranitar for the Dynamax Inteleon. May want to reconsider, how quickly he Dynamaxed, and how much they prioritize the Inteleon knockout.
Inteleon ended up doing so much work in our Series 1 when Alfredo was piloting it.
Mm-hmm.
Inteleon ended up doing a decent amount of work in this game as well, where Oliver has really taken that control of the game, but I do believe that Eduardo did a great job of just making sure that Pokemon stayed in check.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're right about there needing to be a bit more of a focus on some of the other Pokemon on the field, particularly that Grimmsnarl.
All right, well, here we go. Arcanine and Tyranitar against the Inteleon and Grimmsnarl. Both these players liked what happened.
I think Eduardo feels as though they have a different sense of the game now and will be able to use the Tyranitar a little bit better, particularly when it does get the weakness policy boost. We saw that the Max Geyser's not enough on its own to be able to finish off the Tyranitar. We didn't necessarily see the Fake Tears Max Geyser combo, but I don't know if that's going to actually be enough either. Tyranitar ends up being such a bulky Pokemon, and it has such high defensive stats that it is able to take multiple hits. And particularly when you pair that with the Arcanine that's sitting beside it, you can make sure that that damage isn't going to be as much with the potential Snarl.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the big thing here is that Tyranitar sets the sand for itself. What we saw in the first game was Rhyperior needing to set the sand through max Rockfall. So because Tyranitar has already set the sand, it already has the special defense boost from being a rock type in the sand, which helps it survive those max geysers.
Absolutely.
But it looks like we're just going to go right into more big Pokemon, the big Inteleon on the field, Dynamaxed on turn 1 to continue to try and get some of that offensive momentum and probably try to change this weather as well.
Changing the weather is going to be really important to make sure that this Tyranitar doesn't have the extra defensive boosts from being that rock type in the sand. But as we saw on that turn 1 from game 1, we're going to see both Pokemon Dynamaxing here.
Yeah, again, both Pokemon Dynamax, the Tyranitar and the Inteleon, turn 1, first move of the game. It sort of reminds me back when we had Mega Evolutions of the Pokemon just sort of mega evolving on turn 1 every time. There will be the Protect from the Arcanine to blow the Fake Out again this time. So it looks like we're going to have basically a repeat of that first turn with the Max Geyser coming out onto Tyranitar.
Ooh, that's going to do over half damage, and I actually really like this adjustment here coming out from Oliver because originally we saw Inteleon show that it has the ability to go for the Max Airstream. And now seeing the Max Geyser, we are going to see so much extra damage going on to this Tyranitar. And Tyranitar, though, able to fire back with a Rockfall of its own, it is going to be boosted right now.
Yeah, so that weakness policy boost, Max Rockfall, just going to squish Inteleon and go down. But you're right, not having the Airstream this time, able to get damage onto Tyranitar immediately. But without the Airstream boost, Grimmsnarl's foul play may be a little bit riskier.
Is going to be a bit riskier. The weather as well, being reset by the Max Rockfall is going to keep that Tyranitar very safe for the moment. We saw that foul play wasn't able to do nearly as much as I think Oliver was hoping for. It's going to do maybe about half of what's left. But yeah, you're right about the Max Airstream. I'm not sure whether or not Grimmsnarl is going to be able to get off that attack right away because that Airstream looked very important for that Grimmsnarl to be able to use the foul play in the first place. Yeah,
well, we are going to see the Conkeldurr switch in here. Of course, whenever your opponent has a Tyranitar out on the field, if you have Conkeldurr, try to get it in as well. But Eduardo, understanding that, switches out the Arcanine for Togekiss. With its Follow Me, we'll be able to pretty easily protect that Tyranitar. But it looks like Oliver's also going to try and make some adjustments here, recognizing that switch in, so gets Rotom-Mow in.
Tyranitar going for another Max Rockfall.
That's a big Rockfall onto the Lawnmower, though. Oh.
Ooh. This is going to be the second time we're just getting clean one-hit knockouts. I think this is the adjustment that Eduardo needed to make, just ensuring that the weather was going to be up in order to protect that Tyranitar, because Tyranitar now has gotten off not one, but two very powerful moves with that weakness policy boost.
That was such a gutsy play from Eduardo there to go for the Max Rockfall in the face of a potential Mach Punch coming out from the Conkeldurr. Oliver tried to go for, and did successfully catch the Togekiss on the switch with that Ice Punch. But because the Tyranitar was able to fire off that Max Rockfall, the Rotom just, the lawnmower ran over a rock and it busted down.
I like that analogy. I like it a lot. Withdrawing the Togekiss, though, we are going to see the Arcanine come back in for Eduardo. And I really like this because you are going to get the Intimidate boost off now. And just preserving the Arcanine for the Intimidates alone really makes this Conkeldurr a little less scary.
Yeah, that Fake Out's not going to do anything because Arcanine got what it needed by switching in with the Intimidate. Not enough to pick up the KO with that Intimidate. Actually, might have been pretty close even without the Intimidate. But the Max Rockfall comes down onto Grimmsnarl, picks up that KO, and this is why I'm terrified of boosted Tyranitar. It just picks up free KOs left and right.
It really has 3 free one-hit knockouts here from this Tyranitar, and it's all of its max move energy as well. Yep. That's some massive value coming in from Eduardo's Tyranitar, and we're not even done yet. There has been no ability to knock out any of the Pokemon in this game, and Eduardo's going to take that game 2 very convincingly.
Yeah, Oliver just going to forfeit that game 2 to get into game 3 quicker. Really strong play there. Such a gutsy play there from Eduardo, not afraid of the Conkeldurr's Mach Punch. It's what we were talking about in the lead up before this game.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you just have to get in their heads to understand, I think that, I respect Oliver as a player. The normal move here would just be to max guard Tyranitar because I'm afraid of the Mach Punch, switch in the Togekiss, and then next turn try to go on the offensive with the Follow Me. Oliver read that play, went for the Ice Punch on Togekiss, but didn't catch the fact that Eduardo was just going to go aggressive, just going to immediately go aggressive with that Max Rockfall, pick up the KO onto whatever switched into that slot, which was the Rotom Mow, and then from there Tyranitar was just sitting pretty.
That was an example of a hard read kind of just not working out the way that you were hoping that it would. I think Oliver was really expecting that Eduardo was going to go for the max guard. So I definitely respect the play of going for after the Togekiss instead. But this is why we have a best of 3, because now we're going to our very first game 3 of the day.
Our first game 3 of the day, probably not the last game 3 of the day.
Definitely not the last.
That would be an astounding tournament. But really great set from both of these players so far. Game 1, Oliver was able to control it for most of the game. And then this game 2, Oliver still was in really good position, but just missed the read. Eduardo got his hard read correct and was able to take that win. So here we go. The Ants.
Wow, this is going to be a very interesting turn of events here because we haven't seen Eduardo bring Durant just yet. And as we talk about Durant being such a powerful Pokemon sitting next to the Togekiss, which can end up clicking Follow Me, and you can see the Durant Dynamaxing, this is going to be a very difficult situation for Oliver to get out of because Inteleon can't just go ahead and Dynamax and click the Max Geyser. Oh, but instead, Eduardo's going for a switch here and going to bring out the Gastrodon, potentially expecting the Follow Me. This is a hard read here.
Okay, yeah, switching in the Gastrodon has seen that Oliver likes to go ahead and use the Dynamax on Inteleon in the past, hoping to catch that again. Instead, Eduardo is just going to go ahead and bring in Durant to the full Dynamax glory of that Ant Pokemon. No Dynamax here from Inteleon, so we'll be able to continue to use a Snipe Shot here and avoid the Storm Drain. That's the Snipe Shot. Fake Tears picks up the KO onto Durant with a critical hit. Gastrodon Storm Drain not able to redirect Inteleon's sniper accuracy, and by not Dynamaxing there, Inteleon able to actually pick up that KO.
That was such a smart play coming out from Oliver. It can be very difficult to play around a Durant because of the fact that you have a Togekiss that uses the Follow Me. Eduardo was expecting there that maybe Inteleon's going to Dynamax again because Oliver was going for the Dynamax turn 1 every other game. Oliver remembered Snipe Shot is able to get past those redirect abilities and just went right for the knockout.
Yeah, and if Inteleon had Dynamax and tried to go for Max Geyser, that would not have worked. Only Snipe Shot gets to avoid the Storm Drain. Such a huge play there from Oliver. Really, really great to see a player like Oliver keeping a level head, understanding all of the different options, especially with these new max moves.
And this is going to be a little bit of a problem here for Eduardo because Durant was the big source of damage for the team. And it's
you've got Togekiss, Arcanine, and Gastrodon. Where's the damage now?
Yeah, it's completely gone. So this is going to be a very difficult situation here for Eduardo, but it's fine for Oliver. Oliver is going to get a chance to Dynamax this Inteleon and go for some knockouts.
Yeah, Eduardo doesn't have the damage on the field right now, but Oliver does. Here's the big Inteleon out here. Still can't fire off Max Geysers with Gastrodon on the field. We have already seen Max Airstream. May have some other additional coverage moves to fire off as well. Gastrodon just going to protect itself for this turn. So Arcanine fairly safe with Gastrodon still on the field and Dynamaxed Inteleon, but just going to set up a bunch of different fake tiers on Arcanine.
May as well go for that because the Max Airstream is going to go right into it and get the knockout. That was
disgusting.
Absolutely dirty. Fake Tears is doing so much work for Oliver's team.
Yeah, Inteleon really showing off here in this Game 3. That Grimmsnarl's Fake Tears support showing exactly why that's such a strong partner to the Inteleon.
Well, we did see that this is potentially a Super Luck Togekiss, and a lot of Super Luck Togekiss we do see paired with that Scope Lens, so maybe these critical hits coming out from the Togekiss will be able to do some big damage here to Oliver's side, but we're already at a 2 Pokemon disadvantage for Eduardo, which is going to be a bit difficult to come back from, just given the fact that the big damage from the Durant is gone, and we didn't see the Storm Drain ability really get a chance to be used here from that Gastrodon.
Yeah, Eduardo is going to need a lot of critical hits here, and maybe some super critical hits here, as Grimmsnarl is just going to continue to spam the Fake Tears onto whichever Pokemon is not Gastrodon. Inteleon shows Max Hailstorm with the Fake Tears onto Togekiss. Oh my god, that's so much damage.
We saw in Game 2 that Eduardo was able to take full advantage of all 3 Dynamax turns, and now Oliver showing you're not the only one that can do that.
I know there are 3 turns to Dynamax too.
Yeah, and it's really paying off here. The Fake Tears plus the Max Move combination coming out from Oliver has made this such a quick and convincing game for Oliver. It's been such a back and forth between these 2 players, but my goodness, is such a powerful combination from that in Pokemon.
Yeah, absolutely. And there it is going to be the forfeit coming out from Eduardo. Knows that there is no win condition, and Oliver Eskolin is going to take that 3rd game.